Ooh. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. Welcome. My name is Emily Shields. I'm the Executive Director of Iowa Campus Compact. I'm going to talk in a minute about what that is because I know some of you might be new to our organization and just want to give you a little bit of background. But thank you for being here today to talk a little more about our new initiative around giving voice to the civic mission of higher education. We're excited to work with you and get your ideas. So we're going to share a little bit of information today about the plans going forward and have the opportunity for ideas you might have either in the space today or by reaching out to me after the call. So just a couple of things about us. Iowa Campus Compact has been in existence for 13 years. We're a part of a national organization that's been around for over 30. Our mission is really to strengthen the capacity of colleges and universities to prepare students to become active citizens and engaged citizens. I'll talk a little bit later about what that means and some examples of that. And our vision is really that our coalition of colleges and universities is leading the civic mission of higher education in the state. So we're a membership organization. You're on today because your institution is a member of Iowa Campus Compact and National Campus Compact. We have 21 members in the state, so representing a lot of private colleges, community college, and the 3 public universities. The president of your organization is the one who chose to join. That's how we get membership, is by presidents joining, but then we really serve the entire institution, working with faculty, staff, students in a variety of ways. We really focus in 3 areas. So one is building capacity of our member institutions. We do that in a lot of different ways with programs, again, for faculty interested in community engaged teaching and research, for staff supporting community engagement efforts on campuses, and other staff involved in those things in community service and those types of efforts. We also are working to build a network in the state. We have AmeriCorps programs that support students directly who are working in the community and building capacity on their campus for community engagement. And then we're working to network engaged faculty, staff, leaders, and students across the state. And so we have a lot of events throughout the year to try to do that and build professional development and that kind of thing. And then our third area is really what we're looking to talk about today. So when we did our strategic plan about 1.5 years ago, one of the big things that came up with our presidents and other elements of our member institutions from across the state was this idea that we needed to work more together to give voice to the civic mission of higher education. So I'll talk in a minute about what that really is, but where this fits with our strategy is the idea that we want to increase the perceived value of civic and community engagement in higher education and the outcomes that it produces, both for students and for the community, with the idea being that if we speak with one voice with a common message, we can take all these little stories about community engagement and help bring them together into a whole and paint a picture of something that really is valuable and critical to our state, to communities across our state, to education, and really to our higher education institutions. So what is the civic mission? It really is to educate students for active citizenship and make impacts on community issues. So higher education was initially founded as a way to create people who could contribute to democracy and contribute to their communities. And that's still what a lot of our higher education institutions are working to do. There are also direct partnerships with the community where your institutions are really giving back and making an impact. So this can be through service learning courses, it can be through the volunteer work of students, it can be through community engaged research that faculty are doing, and other ways they're lending their expertise to the community. And it can be different ways that the institution as a whole is impacting the community, whether that's about working in the neighborhood, how you're supporting the city that you're in. And community is not limited to the local geographic area. Many of our member institutions are engaged in communities across the country and across the world, and we want to promote all of those things. So that's what Giving Voice to the Civic Mission is focused on. So why is telling this story important? So some of the things that came up when we were first talking about this strategy in our strategic planning process, and then in the research we've done since, fall into a couple of categories. So one is the civic skills gap. So we know from different research that we really have a gap in this country in terms of people being involved in elections, contacting elected officials, making our democracy work better. And in terms of college students, in a recent survey, only a third felt that their college had increased their civic capacities. And so this is something we're still working to build. And it's clear, especially with recent events in the country, that we have some work to do in terms of people's ability to get involved in their communities, talk to each other, and really make positive and effective social change together. So coupled with that, there's a professional skills gap in a number of areas. So sometimes this is talked about in terms of STEM fields specifically, or different technical skills. But in our research, again, we really focused on some of the more soft skills, as they're sometimes termed, but we're calling core skills. So 3 in 4 employers really want this emphasis on critical thinking, problem solving, communications, being able to apply things, solving problems with people whose views are different from you. These are all things that are highly valued by employers, and that employers sometimes say they're not finding in graduates, and that they're struggling with a little bit. So this is another skills gap that we're focused on and makes this message important. So why else is telling the story important? Declining support. So this is just one chart of many that I know all of you will be familiar with in terms of the decline in support from government and other sources, and the increasing need to focus on tuition. This has also created an environment of extreme competition and these kinds of things that create urgency for us as higher education to be able to come together and tell a different story about the value that we're providing. And part of this disconnect is thinking about what is it that people value about higher education, and how do those things link together. So in some of our research, we looked at what do parents say is the most important reason for their child to go to college? What are people really looking for? So the number one, unsurprisingly, is to get a good job. But this creates an issue where there's declining support if higher education is just seen as something that's about that private good of someone getting a good job. So those things often are pitted against each other and come up against each other in terms of what we need to be working against about the conversation about higher education and the conversation about the value. So that brings us to our message. I mentioned that getting a good job and educating people for active citizenship are often seen as these two very different things that we have to choose between, right? We're either focused on people getting a good job, or we're focused on this education for active citizenship, and there's seemed to be a battle there. The messages we've found it to be is that actually students need the same core skills for both civic and professional success. So we don't necessarily have to choose between the two, because the things that employers are saying they want are the same things that would help to improve people being involved in their communities and in our democracy. So again, some of these skills like communication and critical thinking, being able to work across difference, being able to apply your skills and knowledge in real world settings. These are all the kind of skills that we know employers are looking for, and we know that you need for success as an engaged citizen and in your community. So we want to be able to talk about how much those things are linked together, and how we can be working more together to spread that message about these core skills that we know students need to build, and that we know can hit both of those value propositions. So the other piece of our message that really ties back to community engagement and to the way in which these skills can be built is that quality community experiences are key to developing these skills. So we know from research that community engagement can build things like critical thinking, again, which is needed for both professional and civic success. Communication, being able to develop your leadership skills, being able to communicate across difference, being able to get your message out there. Working across difference, community engagement has been shown to reduce stereotypes and facilitate cultural and racial understanding. and application. Community engagement experiences allow students to very directly take what they're learning in the classroom and apply it to problem solving, to a community issue, to very specific projects. Again, that give them something to really build those skills and talk about with potential employers so that they're ready to graduate, get a good job, but then also continue to be people who are involved in making a difference in their community and who are involved in our democracy. So again, just to give some more concrete examples of what the kind of community experiences I'm talking about and what that can look like on campus. So again, service learning courses, community projects, and other programs that are often unique and specific to campuses and sometimes are across campuses, like dance marathon and things like that. Days of service where a bunch of students and staff and faculty are getting out in the community, service through clubs and organizations, community engaged research, so that can involve faculty members and it hits with another high impact practice, community dialogue, where campuses are really supporting dialogue across the campus and dialogue with the community around difficult issues and that kind of thing, and things like nonprofit internships. Really, again, all ways that are really hitting that experiential learning element, and you're getting involved in making a difference in the community. So the ultimate message is that our goal is graduating students who have the skills and experience for success as what we're calling civic-minded professionals. So just to illustrate that for you a little bit, civic-minded professionals are, again, our ideal graduate that really has the critical thinking and problem-solving skills, communications and cultural competence, empathy and passion for their careers and for the things they're involved in the community, the ability to work in teams and work across difference, and then the efficacy to really take action and the ability to apply knowledge and skills in different settings. So again, this is really that picture of a civic-minded professional. This is the kind of person we want to graduate and the kind of person that can be built through these community experiences and other efforts happening on campus. So this is really the thing we want to work together to get the word out about, both examples of these kind of graduates and how they got there, and examples of the different ways where our campuses are working to build these types of professionals. So one of the other things we've thought a lot about with this is just, you know, with awareness campaigns, with trying to change people's minds, that can be very broad and unfocused. And we want to focus as much as possible. And in doing that, we looked at who are some of the most influential audiences for higher education that could have the most impact on how value is perceived and how institutions are supported. So we focus in a couple of areas. One is business and community leaders. So this is, you know, people involved in your institution, potentially as trustees, donors, that kind of thing, but also the people who are ultimately looking to hire our graduates and that have the ability to be engaged in the conversation about what higher education is doing, what the value is, and what it's for. So some of the messages, again, a little more specifically with these audiences, would be thinking about just more understanding about how quality community and civic engagement experiences can help students build these skills. Thinking beyond internships, which tend to dominate the conversation and are certainly an important part of students getting experiential learning, but aren't really the full story. So thinking about a continuum of opportunities for students to build these skills and abilities. And then thinking about how we can help them recruit and retain these civic-minded professionals. So some calls to action for that audience would be, again, we think business leaders do understand this to a large extent. You know, they're looking for these core skills. They value volunteer experience and other direct community experiences in the people they're looking to hire and in their employees. And often they're emphasizing employee volunteer engagement once they have hired people. So thinking about ways that they might be able to influence students, parents, and policymakers about the value of higher education and the value of these community experiences, helping them to think about how they might be able to emphasize and effectively evaluate these skills and experiences in their recruiting and hiring processes, and then also helping them with what we've learned about how quality community engagement can work in higher education, with how to really leverage their employee volunteer program so that they can continue this way of building professional skills through community involvement and hopefully retain employees. So another key audience that we touched on when we talked about the perceived value and reasons for higher education would be parents, and then, of course, students as well. With parents perhaps being the more skeptical audience at times in terms of the true value and critical nature of community engagement experiences. So one of the things we found is that students think, or parents tend to think community experiences are good, but not critical. So there's something for their student to maybe get involved with if they have time, but not really something that is important to the college experience and important to getting that good job. So the messages there would be that experiences matter, especially those that involve applying your skills and knowledge, that these experiences both educate students for active citizenship and just that more well-rounded life that I think we all hope for children and for students, but also help improve their job skills, their employability, and their career readiness. And then just kind of redefining what success is beyond that first job. So thinking about, again, wanting students to graduate and be that civic-minded professional. Again, calls to action for this audience, thinking about asking about these opportunities when comparing colleges, so making that really a part of the comparison, looking at what kinds of opportunities students will get there, learning about ways to take advantage of these opportunities, and then really figuring out how to maximize the learning and skill building in these experiences and effectively leverage them for career success. So I'll talk about this in a little bit, but one of the things we're looking at putting together is more materials to help parents and students think about how do you get the most out of these experiences? How might you reflect them on a resume that's different than maybe how that typically is done and really could emphasize the skill building more? How might you really network as a part of those experiences, talk about them in interviews, and really make that a big part of the job search, which again, in our research and in our conversations with graduates, and I'll share some examples of that, and others, we've really found that this is something students who have done community experiences talk about a lot when they're in the job search, when they're interviewing. Those are all of those sort of behavior and hypothetical questions where you have to talk about your past experiences. These kinds of things can give students something much more concrete to talk about in terms of knowing how they will apply the skills and knowledge they've gotten in higher education. So how might we spread this message? We're going to get into that a little bit more and how you might engage, and I'm looking forward to more ideas from our member institutions as we move this forward. The spokespeople we are seeing as our member institutions, so that's why you're here today, thinking about how we can engage together in telling this bigger story and spreading a similar message. So that includes higher education leaders, presidents and others, also trustees, those people who have the most engagement with higher education and ability to use their platform to talk about the importance of these outcomes and these experiences, students who have had these experiences, staff and faculty involved in them, and then alumni who can really speak to how these types of experiences have impacted them, have made them into a civic-minded professional, how that carries forward into their careers and their lives. So some of the channels we're thinking about, starting with traditional media, I'll talk a little bit about the press release we're sending out next week and some ways you might engage with that. Social media, you've seen in this presentation, some of the visuals that we've created that we'll be sharing with member campuses, and we'll continue to work on those so that we can be spreading this similar message on social media and reaching different audiences that way. Thinking about some of the ways we might be able to target those specific audiences a little bit more. We've already built some good partnerships with business publications and are thinking about how they might cover both the launch of this strategy, but then also as we continue to produce more resources for businesses, as we talked about, in terms of how they might evaluate potential hires and support employee volunteer engagement. As we continue to think about building resources and bringing stories together around those things, really working with those publications and with business organizations, again, that have the ability to communicate more directly with that audience. In terms of thinking about parents, alumni, really thinking about the alumni networks of our member campuses and how we might be able to provide resources that help tap into that. And again, just with this slightly more specific message around the value of community engagement and the idea of a civic-minded professional. And then also helping campuses think about existing events, communication that you're having with parents, with students, as they're coming in, before they come in, as they're comparing colleges and universities, and then as they're thinking about leaving and thinking about career services and taking advantage of these opportunities, putting together more materials that our member campuses can use to communicate with those existing audiences, and that will help you spread this message. And so we're looking for ideas, and we've already put together some resources looking for more ideas for how we could best support member campuses and make it really easy to be able to take this message out to the audiences that you're already communicating with. So, some ways that you can get involved. This is an ongoing campaign. Our plan is to launch it next week, which I'll talk about. But then this is just, we want to establish a different way of working with you and helping and supporting the work that you're doing on your campus. So this is about spreading a common message and sharing your campus's unique stories. But again, with the idea being that we can take all these small, unique, different takes on a similar theme and make them into a larger whole that hopefully helps get the message out to people that we do have this value as higher education in Iowa. So one of the ways we want to think about doing this is somewhat reframing our messages. So another thing that we looked at in our research was just what are some of the messages and stories going out now about community experiences and the civic mission. And some of it is thinking about really moving from feel-good stories that tend to emphasize the community impact and some of the outcomes for the community to ones that emphasize a little bit more, again, the critical impact that this can have on students and their experiences as well. So we definitely will be emphasizing community impact too, and that will come a little later in the strategy as we look at shifting and introducing different messages throughout our campaigns. But again, the ultimate mission of higher education is educating students. So we want to make sure that these experiences are seen as having that strong impact on that educational experience and on the outcomes of that educational experience. So we want to work with you on telling engaging and true stories about this impact in a way that people will read. And so I know a lot of you are communications professionals, so you don't need me to tell you some of this stuff, but we have others on here who maybe have a little less experience there. And so just wanted to share a little bit of our thinking in this area. So people are really moved by a problem with a viable solution. So again, the feel-good story may gain a little bit less traction than the story that really creates this narrative about the problem and the solution. So again, moving from that the feel-good framework to the problem-solution framework. So as we've talked about with our message, the problem-solution being the civic skills gap and the professional skills gap, and how these community experiences can be filling those gaps and adding value to the higher education experience for students in a way that benefits both employers who are hiring these individuals, but our community and our state as a whole, because of the kind of people who will be graduating and be able to contribute back to their communities after graduation as they move forward. So to help illustrate this a little bit better, I have written an example about Dance Marathon. So when I show you the website, I'll show you where you can find the story and I can send it out afterwards. But just to give you an example, Dance Marathon, if you're not familiar with it, is a program with the Children's Miracle Network hospitals where students can really take the lead on a big fundraising effort on their campus for those hospitals. So students serve on an executive board where they're really leading this Dance Marathon fundraising effort. It's a 24-hour event in some cases. And in the state as a whole, member campuses have, and those students running those Dance Marathon experiences have raised $3.8 million just this year. So there is a big community impact. And there have been a fair number of stories about that. So one is, though, that those have been individual stories. So again, they don't necessarily tell this larger picture about how much of an impact higher ed in Iowa is having on this community issue. So it's more those individual stories. And the student experience is framed as more in terms of being important to the cause and being important to fundraising and not necessarily to their development. So again, I worked on a story where we really created the problem problem solution framework with students needing these core skills and Dance Marathon really providing those experiences. So just one quote from that story, talking about how with Dance Marathon, it even goes beyond an internship where you're actually running an organization, running the meetings, making the sponsorships asks, and it being a lot more hands-on even than a typical internship is. So that story hopefully helps to provide an example of the kind of joint messaging that I think we can do to really bring some of these stories together. So I'll talk about that. So it's something you think about in terms of engaging with us, in terms of just the story, as you're thinking about stories as they come up on your campus, how you want to talk about them. Our goal is to try to be helpful in terms of providing different ways of framing and looking at these issues to hopefully gain a little bit more traction and attention for them. So some of the first things you can do to get involved, and again, we can talk one-on-one about this with any campus, and are always looking for ideas as well. So we have a template press release that's available on the website, and I'll send it out after this meeting as well. So you can promote the launch of the campaign and your campus's involvement in it. Add a little bit of, one way we always want to do this is allow each member campus to always be able to add their unique take on this. One of the valuable things is we do have this larger story, but we have a larger story that has all these great nuances and niches depending on the campus and how they look at it. So it's a release where you can talk about being involved in this campaign, to talk about the civic mission, and also just your campus's unique take on that civic mission and what that looks like for you. So we want you to share your civic mission stories with us and on social media. I'll talk in a minute about some specific joint campaigns we're looking at doing around specific elements of this, but in general, we would love to just be able to amplify any stories that you are putting out there by knowing they're out there on social media, which we look for, but getting those directly also always helps, so we can kind of be sharing them, and then also gathering those stories together on our website, which I'll show you, so that again, we have a place that is really painting this bigger picture about all the different stories out there about the civic mission and community engagement in higher education. So sharing the campaign with your campus and calling for people to share their stories. So again, this may be a call that brings some of those stories out. I know from working with campuses for the past 6 years that those in communications and even in the community engagement office don't always know those great stories. And so we'll have some resources for you to just be able to ask people, what are the stories you should be telling? What are the ways in which we are helping students gain these core skills? What are some examples of that we can point to? And then we also have talking points around the strategy. We've already sent those out to all of our member presidents, but wanting your help too in thinking about different media experiences, speaking engagements. We have a few things in the works that we'll be continuing to solidify with the launch next week, and we'll be reaching out to member campuses as we get interest from some of the outlets we're talking to, where they might want specific quotes and conversations with presidents, with staff and faculty who work in this area, with graduates, with current students. So the talking points will help us all to be speaking with a similar message and kind of having that similar framing. But we'll be looking for specific people who can provide examples and talk about this. And we've already started to gather some of that. So another plan from here, after we launch just the strategy in general, and hopefully try to get some media coverage around the fact that we're working together to do this and that we're presenting this different value proposition, we want to do some joint campaigns going forward, and this is something we plan to do over the next several years. So we'll be continuing to look for ideas, but we want to look at specific ways in which this is happening that are common across campuses where we can tell this larger story. So some that we're working on right now, again, next week we're launching the strategy in general, putting out that press release, and then sharing the Dance Marathon story. And we've interviewed, I've already done interviews with Dance Marathon, with students and alumni from the University of Iowa, from Loras College, from Grandview University. So we have a few examples there. And then we also, with everything, want to list everyone who's been involved and try to promote all of our campuses that are engaging in a specific area. The week after that, we want to do some promotions on the alternative breaks and service trips taking place this month. I've already gotten some information from our member campuses on what's taking place. I'll continue to collect that, and then again, we'll do a press release really talking about alternative breaks, which we've gotten media coverage for in the past, but again, with this message around what the student experience and student impact really is of those, and how that helps them in their career and in their studies. After that, we're going to focus that last week on campus food pantries. I have several examples already, and if you have another one that I might not have seen, please send it my way, of campuses where students are starting food pantries specifically for their peers. So that where they're starting a food pantry on campus to try to meet the need of students experiencing hunger while they're in college. So this is another one where, again, we want to focus on the impact that's having on obviously students and others in need, but also the ways in which the students who are launching these efforts on campuses are really building skills and learning from those experiences. Then going into April and graduation, we're going to really focus on the civic-minded professional. So that's another area where you can engage. We have already collected several profiles of civic-minded professionals. All are graduates of our member institutions or currently at our member institutions. We want to continue to gather those profiles from our member campuses and be able to share those stories. We have a form on our website for people to answer a couple of questions in order to do that profile. And what we're really asking is for people to tell us what community experiences really contributed to their personal and professional development in college, and how they continue to view themselves as civic-minded professionals in terms of really bringing together their skills in their career with the impact they're trying to have in the community. So we want to continue to share those stories throughout April and May, get those out there across the state, tie into graduation again as we have another generation of those civic-minded professionals going out into the world. And so the talking points can be a part of messages around your graduations where that might be helpful and that kind of thing. And again, we want to continue to collect these profiles as examples of the kind of goal we have around the students that we're graduating. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, beyond this initial outreach and a couple of these initial stories where we're really focusing on specific areas, we want to continue to do that, have specific common messaging and program areas where our campuses are doing certain things, and be able to tell that broader narrative about them. So additional joint campaigns and calls for stories and examples. And we'll always be looking for ideas for different things that we might want to highlight. Again, many of you being media professionals knowing the kinds of different hooks we need to continue to get interest from different media outlets and on social media and that kind of thing. So thinking about that together. We also, as I mentioned, will be putting together resources for student and parent audiences. So thinking about presentations and other handouts that could be a part of recruitment, of orientation, of career services, helping students think about how to represent these experiences on their resumes and in job interviews and that kind of thing. Thinking about how to really do quality engagement experiences and then how to maximize your learning from those. So helping students think more broadly about reflecting on their learning and really bringing that back around to being able to articulate the skills and knowledge that they used in those experiences. So some examples of that. And then, as I also mentioned, putting together some resources for business leaders that can help us continue to engage them. So thinking about how they can evaluate community engagement experiences when they're hiring employees, thinking about taking what we've learned in higher education about quality and community engagement and helping them apply that to employee volunteer programs. I've already done a presentation here in Des Moines to the managers of employee volunteer programs for some of the biggest corporations in the state. So continuing to think about that as we see from research and learn more about how they're trying to do similar things to what we're trying to do in higher education in terms of connecting to retention and to professional development and that kind of thing. So that's what we'll be working on throughout the summer and leading into next year to continue to provide different resources and different ways of engaging. So just really quickly, I want to show you We have a lot of resources available on our website in this area that you can check out. So if you go to iacampuscompact.org/givingvoice, we have a main page that outlines the strategy. You can link to the latest news and stories, which will include, for the time being, the press release and the Dance Marathon story, and then we'll continue to add both our own stories there and links to news stories across the state that tie into this effort. We have some information on those core skills we talked about. We also here have the place where people can share their story as a civic-minded professional, so we can direct people there. If you scroll down there, you can see we have some different pages for the different audiences. And if you go to the page for higher education institutions, you can access some of the resources that I mentioned today, and we'll be continuing to add resources there. So see here, you can access the talking points I mentioned, the template press release, information on how to share the campaign with people on your campus, and then again, my contact information. I'm always looking to hear from people with different ideas. How could this strategy and us working together best serve your campus, your goals, what you're trying to do with your communications, sending me stories that you're putting out that we can, again, share as a part of this collective and help you to amplify and that kind of thing. So please check out those resources there. And then just to briefly go back to the PowerPoint, in case you're wondering where I got some of the facts and figures that I shared, we have a list of those resources, and I'll send this PowerPoint out to you so that if you have an interest in diving in deeper to some of the places where we found the data we're using for the talking points and for some of the other messages, we have a good list of those sources here for you to access. So I'm going to stop there and just see if anyone has questions, comments, ideas, anything else we can talk about today that would help you think about engaging in this strategy in a way that helps move things forward for your campus. Feel free to speak up or use the chat box, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, well, I know engaging people virtually can be difficult. So if it works better to contact me directly with any of the ideas or questions you might have, that is perfectly fine. My email address, I think you all have. Oh, is there an element of this campaign focused on prospective students is a question? Yeah, so I think when we talk about and we've kind of framed it in terms of parents, again, because in many cases, they're pretty involved in that decision. We want to, yes, help you think about in your recruitment process, how you can emphasize the community engagement experiences that students can access on your campus. And again, going back to the overall message, why those experiences are valuable and critical to the higher education experience. So when I talked about some of the resources we want to put together, some of that will be resources you can think about using in your recruitment materials and outreach in that way. So where you're thinking about, again, what's a good message around this and how you can talk about it. Yes, okay, so more recent data than the stat about our civic engagement? Sure. So we have, in the talking points, you'll see some other statistics that really speak to the civic skills gap that I talked about, and we can continue to add resources that might provide even more up-to-date statistics and information in that area. That's a good point. Anything else? Well, I really want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today and to learn more about this, whether you're here live or watching this after the fact. We're excited to engage with you. We're looking for ideas and feedback. I will tomorrow be sending out this recording, sending again out the talking points and the template press release with more information on when we plan to release that next week. And how you can communicate with me about the media outlets you might be able to reach out to and help us get some attention with, and how I can be involved in that, and how we can work with our presidents and others on that as well. So thank you so much. It was great to talk to all of you, and have a great day.